BioNB is sponsoring this webinar, which I work for, is a non-for-profit, non-government agency established in 20 years ago. We are the voice of the bioscience sector, and our job is to support researchers and entrepreneurs in developing businesses. And as I mentioned, we work with over 40 startups. My presentation is scheduled to last about 20 minutes. I'll probably go a little bit longer because there's a fair bit in this topic today, and we've got a good audience out there. I'm going to ask that you submit your questions at any time using the questions tab on the webinar panel to the right, and I will get to them. We'll do a little 5 or 10 minute Q&A session, so send them anytime. I'm going to send out a copy of the slides tomorrow, but I only give them to you in exchange for your completion of a survey that we're going to ask. Just a quick survey. We want to understand where you are in the sales process and what help you need. This is a first step in us understanding where people are at in terms of sales and what supports they need. You can check out all our webinar recordings on our website, and there's the link there. So we'll dive right into sales. Today's goal is high-level survey, so I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of different things. You're not going to walk out of here knowing how to do sales. There's a lot to it. We're going to talk about next steps for you and future training. Sales is an art, so it's something that's learned by doing, but there is some theoretical work you can do. And this is kind of a starting point for you. This is for early stage companies. They're in pre-commercialization stage and early commercialization, and we focus on bioscience, but the stuff I'm going to talk about is applicable to any startup. But some of my examples might relate to bioscience because that's who our clients are. And I've got a pretty good package of resources that you will have access to at the end of the slide deck, at the end of the presentation, so you can start using those. So I want to start off with a reality check about sales. By experience, I've never been a pure salesperson. I kind of fell into ending up being on a business development team. I worked for a startup here in town about 10 years ago. I worked there for 5 years, and I was hired in marketing. Be the marketing person doing market research. One day I came to work and my boss had emailed a bunch of us and said we were now on the business development team. So my first question was, what's business development? My second question was, I'm scared that this is sales. So I had done sales in the past, retail, which is tough. But the sales we ended up doing in business-to-business sales and business-to-government and business institution sales I actually quite enjoyed, and it was very different than I thought. This wasn't the cold calling or selling encyclopedias door-to-door, or if you've ever seen Glengarry Glen Ross, Alec Baldwin, the character in that movie, he does a really fine job portraying a sleazy salesman. If you ever get a chance to look at that on YouTube, I suggest you do that. It's pretty funny. But that's not what sales is for the most part. So people have some myths about what sales is. It's that it's dirty and not something you want to do. A lot of university grads, because I went to business school, didn't want to go into sales. They thought it was beneath them. That it's very hard, and that can be the true, depending on what you're selling. But for the most part, what I found is it's not. You just have to have a different perspective on it. And a lot of people think that sales is unnecessary nowadays. You can just sit back, put some Google ads up, or use social media or some vague marketing automation program, and you can sell. But that's not the case. We'll talk about that, why that's the case, why that isn't the case. So truths are that businesses exist to get and keep customers. That's the reason a business exists. We have clients that are doing research projects, and that's great, but if you want to move into commercialization, you have to realize that your job is not to develop products, but to get customers. That's all that matters. And sales is the most important function of a business. That's why it exists. And that every employee is involved in sales to some extent. And that's very much so the case in a startup. It's not left to the sales and marketing person, which you probably won't be able to afford at first, that everybody needs to get involved in that process, particularly the CEO. And even in a software company, developers go on sales calls. They need to talk to customers. They need to understand what customers need. They can't just sit in a vacuum. So it's really important, especially in early stage companies. And sales isn't about cold calling and pounding the pavement and high pressure tactics. the stuff I'm going to talk about today is about building personal relationships with people and trying to see if you can solve problems. And if you can't solve the problem, that's okay. So there's no pressure. You're trying to build trust with people. You don't want to push something on them. You don't want to sell a product, and we learned this the hard way. Selling a product to the wrong person for the wrong reasons always backfires. So it's about building trust. It's actually an enjoyable in business-to-business type selling. So a quick definition of what I'm going to talk about today is often called business development, and business development has many different definitions, but we're going to think about it in the context of selling. It's helping someone determine their needs and wants and seeing if you can solve a problem for them. And they don't have to buy it from you, so there's no pressure. It's not, your goal isn't to sell everybody you talk to. It's to find those people and deliver a solution that works for them. And you want to build a long-term relationship with that customer because it's easier to keep that customer than to go find other ones. And as I said, it's about trust. And this is from a training program that we took called Mastering Business Development. And they do seminars, and they have a correspondence course that my boss did, and we were able to look at the materials, and we took some training. But this was a really good program. It's out of the U.S., and it was all about this idea of solution selling and working with people and listening to people. So it's very different than what my understanding of what sales was once we got into this. So I want to talk next about the difference between sales and marketing. So marketing tends to be different, of course, but in what way? So marketing is kind of the first step in the commercial process, and the idea behind marketing is to capture attention and to generate leads. And we're talking from a business-to-business sales perspective here. We're not talking about consumer products or anything like that. It's a one-way dialogue, so usually you're reaching out to people. You aren't having a conversation, and the idea is to build awareness, and your typical tactics are using the website and Google Ads and email marketing and your traditional advertising, billboards, your magazine ads, or television, using public relations, media releases and that kind of stuff, going to conferences and setting up a booth. Not the networking necessarily, but actually having a presence, which I was heavily involved in doing. And doing webinars, like we used to do webinars to generate leads, and we wrote white papers. So that's where I was involved in the software company that I work for that kind of informs what the content of today's webinar. But I was involved in early stage business development, doing selling. I wasn't necessarily very good at it, but I learned how to do it, and I fumbled through it like a bunch of us, and over time we were able to bring in experienced salespeople after we'd started getting traction. So we learned a lot, and we were able to bring in people. So sales is the next step, and the idea behind sales is to drive decision making, to get somebody to commit to buying your product or service, giving you money. And you're trying to take those leads and turn them into qualified customers. We're going to talk about pipelines in a moment, but not everybody's going to buy your product, so you have to find out who amongst those leads is actually somebody who's going to end up using and find value in what you're selling. It's a two-way dialogue. It's having conversations, and as I said, you're building a relationship. And the methods are the old-fashioned talking. It really comes down to talking. You're talking on the phone, you're talking at a conference, you're doing networking at events, and you're having meetings. So it's that personal connection, that dialogue, we've been doing for millions of years, building a relationship and having a conversation. So that's what I was talking about. People tend to think we don't need a sales staff anymore. That's not the case. In business to business or business to institution sales. So there's always going to be a place for salespeople. Sales phases. So this webinar is about early stage businesses, those startups. And I've had 2 previous webinars on market validation, and the last one was in November. It was called Talking to Humans. And the idea here in a nutshell is that you get out and you start talking to potential customers as soon as possible so that you can really understand what they're looking for, because the product that you've developed, what you think may sell, may not sell, or may not meet needs in the market. And if you're doing a bioscience, in particular with our clients, there's a stage where you can't do this because of IP issues, public disclosure, but as soon as possible, you want to start getting out there and engaging with potential customers. And that's really the start of your sales process. It's not you're not out there doing hard selling, but you're learning as much as possible. And you may end up making a sale out of it. We have a client that they have a product that they've developed, and they've been able to sell to some pilot customers. And that's given them traction. It's really added to their cachet and given them the ability to get some interest from investors and some cash in the door, and to prove that there's there is a customer base for their product. So they've been doing that as they've learned and evolved their product. At this stage, everybody's involved in doing this. The whole founding team, not the CEO or not this sales and marketing person that doesn't really exist. You're trying to figure out what customers really want and involving that product or service. And you're not worried about marketing right now because you don't know who your customer is. You don't know what branding you need to do. That's all stuff that comes later down the road. So people, and I'm a marketing person, when you're in a startup world, you want to push marketing off further into the future because it can be a distraction. The next phase is when you're going to market entry, and the CEO and the business staff are going to be focused on doing sales, but they're going to get support from everyone because it's still going to be a small team. You're going to be focused on early adopters and moving into mainstream customers, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. You're starting to develop a sales process. I'm going to show you the tools that you can use. You're going to be doing networking and doing cold calling to find leads to build your hit list. And there's some other tactics you can do. And you're going to start with some basic marketing support. We started making what we call product sheets, which summarize the product. Nobody ever read them, but people expect them when you go on a sales call, that you give them something in exchange for their time. They just want something to read. So they're those kinds of tools that you can start building, but you don't necessarily need to have a full-fledged marketing department. You probably can't afford it at this time, but there are some tools that can help support that sales effort, and a website might be one of those, like a basic website. And then the scaling phase is the exciting phase where the money's coming in, and you can, the CEO no longer has to focus on day-to-day selling. You can put together a business development team that's dedicated, maybe with a professional VP of sales. You're focused on mainstream customers, and a lot of your sales are coming from word of mouth. That's the WOM. People are calling you because you have a brand awareness in the marketplace. So there's a marketing function in place, a marketing team that's working to generate leads. You have some marketing automation set up to generate those leads and help qualify them, just because you're scaling. And you're focusing on the after-sales support because you want to keep people. So you've been working to get customers, now you've got to work at keeping them. So supporting them and making sure they're happy with what they purchased. People tend not to think about this phase as a sales phase, but it is. It's probably the more important one because you're really understanding if you have product market fit and you're building those initial relationships with people that you can eventually sell to. So the CEO's role at early stage is market validation and sales. That's their primary function, is to understand product market fit. And then once you've got something that you can sell, to get out there and sell. You've got to go get investment, and it makes it way easier to get investment if you've got some sales, even a few, even some letters of intent or purchase orders can go a long way with investors. You're also focused on key hires, not hiring everybody necessarily, but getting that team together. And a lot of your time is going to be consumed with managing the board and investors, making sure they're up to speed and happy, and getting help from them as you proceed. So that's what the CEO role is. It's not product development. That's the thing. The CEO is a business job. It's not a product development job. So you don't want to get bogged down in that. You're going to be involved in it, but these are your priorities. And the rest of the founding team, so that early stage team, is also involved in this market validation piece. It's not something you can outsource to a consultant because they might not tell you what you want to hear. You have to hear it from the customer. And then they need to do their regular job, whatever that is. If it's the CTO, they've got to develop the product. But the point here is that everybody's involved in sales in some way, shape, or form. We do get a lot of business plans where people say, well, in a couple of years I'm going to hire a sales and marketing person. The problem with that is they're really hard to find. The really good ones cost a lot, and they tend to avoid startups. So people will go, I'll hire a new grad, and that's okay, but you're going to be paying for a learning curve and losing time, and you don't have a lot of time in a startup. You've really got to move quickly. And an experienced salesperson has the Rolodex that can allow them to move fast and to get doors open. But lots of experience can backfire. You hear the startups that hire the VP of sales from some huge company like IBM, and they just have no clue how a startup works, and they expect to have their own office and executive dining room and all that kind of stuff. They just don't understand the hurly-burly of the startup world, and there's lots of stories about big shot VP of sales that flamed out of startups in a very short period of time. When you're the founder and you're trying to find that product market fit, you've got to be talking to those customers because you're still evolving that product. So outsourcing that to a consultant or a staff member means that they don't care as much as you, and they can't act on the key learnings. They can't make those changes. They might not have the authority, or they might not want to press on it. Marketing is a long-term hire. You shouldn't be hiring a full-time marketing person until down the road. And that's coming from a marketing person. They have value, but it's not in the early stages. And you want to do sales. The founding team wants to do sales as long as possible. And we'll talk about in a bit when you might end up hiring a dedicated salespeople. Market type is important because there's basically two markets you can enter. You can take a new product into an existing market. So, you might take a sport utility vehicle and put it into the car market. The business model is defined. You don't have to educate customers about what a sport utility vehicle is, and the differentiation is quite easy because it's higher performance or lower cost. What startups are typically in is new products and new markets, and this makes it really hard because you have no idea who the customer is. You don't know what the business model is. The customers have no clue what you're selling. You have to educate them. So it makes it hard. So what you want to do when you're starting out with a new product in a new market, which is where most of you probably are, is you want to focus on the early adopters. So they're the people who are trying to solve the problem too and want to help you. And some people have said that the quote is, they're as crazy as you are. So you want to identify these people and have them help you, because the mainstream customer doesn't want to take the risk on you. But if they see the early adopters have, they'll do it. It's just human nature. It's just human psychology. So that early adopter phase is that 13.5%. That's the technology adoption curve. And so you want to focus developing your product. So many people focus on the big market at first, but the average person out there doesn't want to take a risk. So the sales curve differs depending on what market you're into and if your product's new or not. So a new product in an existing market, the sales curve is linear. So you enter, and it takes a little bit of time to get some traction in the market. That's just like anything. And early adopters, of course, are the first ones to take a risk. It's just human nature, but sales quickly build at a steady pace. And this is what people are used to, and this is how every financial projection in the universe has been designed. It goes up like this. The reality for new products and new markets is very different. You can see this curve is a lot different. You've got a hump at the front, which is the early adopters, and we ran into this where we did some sales and we got some traction. We thought, wow, we've made it. We're going to sell, and it's going to keep going. It's just going to build, just like the curve in the existing market. But what we found is after we found a few crazy people who gave us money, there were no more crazy people. And we ran into what's called the trough of sorrow, and it's a long, tough slog where you might not make any sales for some period of time, and two things will happen. Either the mainstream customer will take a risk on you, and that will build, and that's the line heading up, which is the one you want, or things won't work out and your business will just fail, and that's what the dotted line is. And nobody has ever designed a projection for a business plan that looks like that, but that's probably what they should look like. I wouldn't suggest anybody do that, but it's good to know that this is the case, that you might make a few early sales to those early adopters, but you may go through a period where things are quite tight and you're not making a lot of sales. And this is where investors who aren't sophisticated think, oh my God, you're not making any money, something's wrong. But people, if they understand that this is how actually products enter the market, if it's a new product in a new market, they have a better understanding how to manage cash flow. Next topic is the sales funnel. So you've probably heard of this term. I'm going to explain, this is a really simple way to explain how it works. Just think of your funnel that you use in the kitchen. At the top, you put leads in. So these could be anybody that maybe you think interested in the product or service you're selling. And these come from hit lists or contacts. You might get ballots filled out at trade shows, for example. You collect ballots. Or you do marketing campaign, like a landing page where people download a white paper and they have to put their name and address in. So these all go into the top. And the leads are people you haven't had a conversation with. You've just had a one-way conversation with them. They're also known as suspects. So some people call them suspects. Prospects is when you're actually speaking. So somebody has responded to you. So you maybe phoned them. And they actually took your call or returned your voicemail, and now you're having a dialogue. So that's what the difference between a lead and a prospect is. And every company has different definitions, and it just depends, but this is generally the simplest way to look at this. And there's prospects that are qualified and ones that aren't. And qualified prospects are typically ones that have what's called BANT or BANT. And when you're talking to somebody, you have to figure out if they have a budget, they have authority to purchase, they actually do need it, and they're going to buy within a certain amount of time, not 5 years from now, not necessarily a week from now. It just depends what you're selling. We were selling to school districts in the U.S., and we found that we were talking to teachers, and we realized very quickly that teachers had no budget, they had no authority, they had a need, and they had a time frame, which was yesterday. But we needed all four of those pieces, so we found we needed to go to somebody else at a higher level. So we identified who those people were. The sales pipeline is different than the funnel. It's an Excel spreadsheet typically, and you might use Salesforce, which can show this, but it's a representation of the status of potential customers by phase, where they are in the selling process and the value, and this is really important for investment. And there's usually some stages. Your initial contact is typically 0% chance of selling. Once you have, you might have a name on a list that means 0, but if you've closed, you've got a 100% chance of getting that sale because you've closed it. And there's different stages, different companies, it depends. You might modify yours over time, and there's different percentage levels. I just picked a simple standard set here for my example. And it allows you to weight your sales pipeline total. And this is something that you update all the time. And your investors love this. This is probably the most important document. If you can walk into a meeting with an investor and show them this, and this is worth more than any business plan you could ever write if you're at that selling phase. So here's an example that I made up. We have counts on the side, different organizations, and there might be different opportunities. Like UNB, we're selling our biogas plant for 2 buildings on the campus, to, let's say, faculty in the cafeteria. And we're tracking when we'd have first contact so we can get the average age, so we can see how long it takes to sell. We estimate when we're going to close. We have potential value, which is what the whole contract might be worth. We list the stage. The probability is connected to the stage, and that gives us our weighted value. So my pipeline is $12.3 million in potential contracts, but I only have $715,000 for sure that I think I'm going to capture. And it takes me about a year, 13 months to sell. So this is really important for cash flow planning. And investors love this stuff, to see this. So this is something you can build really simply in Microsoft Excel when you're starting out. Customer roles in business to business. You're not just selling to the user. There's all kinds of people involved. And this is an example of all the people that might be involved in that sale. And there's people that you need to convince that are typically the user is the last person you're worried about. There's influencers. There's people who can influence the sale. There's also people that work in the background can sabotage the whole sale because they don't like the change or for whatever reason. And there's deciders. The CEO might make the final call. They never use it. They don't even know really what it is, but they base it on costs or return on investment. So this is just showing this just indicate that you're not just focused on users. There's people who actually pay for it, and then there's other people involved in a sale that influence it. So finally, some tips. You're looking at finding the pain points that a customer has and to see if that connects with what you're selling. You're focusing on benefits, not features, which is what we do in bioscience. We love our product, we love what we've developed, but nobody cares as much about that as the what's in it for me is how's it going to solve a problem for me. You want to qualify quickly. This is our CEO always said this: no is better than maybe. Maybe's your death. It's just somebody being nice usually, and they really mean no, but you want to get to the no. You want to get to a no. You don't want a maybe. Pricing, everybody always asks, what should I price it at? It's really hard to know. We just tried stuff. It's an art. You listen, you talk to people, but I'll say never just do it for free because there's no value in that. People will take it, but they might not use it. If it is free, if you do go that way, you want to get something else in exchange. I always think of the example of Radian 6. They would give, and I remember this from a talk Marcella Brunn gave, that they would either they gave their initial pilot customers it for free or at a heavy discount, but they went to their site and sat with the staff and watched them use it and really learned what the customer needed so they could further develop the tool. So they got something else in exchange which was much more valuable than the cash at the time, but as soon as they could, he said that they started generating sales, getting cash in the door. And if you can do a pilot and get a little bit of cash, that's better than nothing. And don't sell yourself short, too. Don't try and underprice it just because you think, well, I got to lower the price to get into the market. Pricing is based on value, so if there's real value in what you're doing, it's going to save people money, they'll buy it. If they're not, maybe your product's not going to sell. It's just not a business. It's a possibility. You want to look for champions. They're people that can help you. They're those early adopters that really believe in what you're doing, and they can open doors for you. So you want to identify those people. And we did that. We found a few people that were real key. We even ended up hiring one of them to be a door opener for us because they just loved what we were doing, and they had a lot of sway and influence in the industry, and they were a great tool for us. And listen more than you talk. Salespeople think, oh, you got to talk, be a motor mouth. No, actually, you got to listen. I'll tell you a story. One of the company, we hired a partner to work with us, and one day one of the sales guys disappeared, and we wondered what happened. And He was fired because he talked too much, and he was let go because he didn't listen. So the boss said at this partner, and they were in the U.S., and it's ruthless down there. But it was interesting eye opener that a salesman was let go for talking too much, not listening enough. So that was just really interesting way to reinforce that point. You can use Excel to manage your pipeline for the first 50 or 100 prospects, but you're probably going to want to look at getting a sales automation program like Salesforce or Pipedrive, and they start at low rates. It makes sense in the long run because you'll pull your hair out managing all this stuff. BioNB, we use Nimble. We don't use it for sales, but we use it to track our contacts. And I've used Salesforce in the past. And Pipedrive is a new one. It's a little bit cheaper one out there. I wanted to mention the Venn program's new one that is designed to help with lead generation. So if you're looking to generate leads outside of Canada, that's the definition of export markets for this program. So not outside New Brunswick, but outside Canada. They have the Target program, which can help with, I believe it's hiring consultants to generate leads for you and help you in some training, I think. And the link that you're going to get there when I send the slides, or you can Google it, has all the information. And Jonathan is the contact, and he'd love it if you'd reached out to him if you're interested in getting some help and getting some leads built. And this is the resources. These are fantastic. These are all ones I've used, and part of our toolkit at BioNB is a bunch of these resources, mostly from Mars, which is a fantastic resource in Toronto. They've got some great tools. They're written by people who have actually done the stuff, not academics. And the one I really like is the second one there, the Selling for Entrepreneurs online course by Kevin Smith. He did business-to-business sales for Dell for 14 years, and it was just a fantastic course. It doesn't take very long to do, but I recommend everybody who's getting involved in selling to watch that. It's free. You can, it probably takes about 2 hours at most. And Mars has a whole bunch of other resources wrapped around sales. So I highly recommend that you check out those resources. And you can contact me anytime, especially if you're a client, one of our clients, give me a shout and we'll talk about sales, what your next steps are. There's my contact information. And Joey Volpe, our international business guy, is going to do, and I'm going to join him, we're going to do a webinar next month, 1 month today, on exporting. And that's what Joey's tasked with. Helping our clients with sales outside of New Brunswick. So I'm really looking forward to that. Joey's a really engaging speaker. We've got a very basic summary of the webinar up on our website, so you can register. And Jenny will be sending out more information over the next month. So right now, I'm going to open up the floor to questions, and Jenny's going to send them to me. Okay, is it okay to charge different customers different prices? Can that get you into trouble? Is it ever too late to adjust your price? That's a really good question. It might get you into trouble if, in the long run, but when you're starting out, you kind of have to try all kinds of different things. One thing you could do is say it's pilot pricing. You could also have a standard price and then discount it for different clients. It's never too late to adjust your price. You should. Think, going back to my point about figuring out what that price should be, it's really hard to do. It's almost impossible. Like, you could overthink it till your head turns blue. But what you want to do is just ask. You're having these conversations, market validation and sales conversations. You're supposed to be listening to people. So ask them these things. Understand, and you don't have to ask them what will you pay for it. You want to understand what their budget is, what kind of return on investment they're looking for. If your solution, if they're really keen about it, if it really fits a need that they have, well, your solution's worth more. than if it isn't. So there's all kinds of factors that figure into this. And Kevin's has a section in his sales course that I just mentioned where he talks about pricing, and he's got some really good ideas. So I suggest, even if it's the only part of that presentation you look at, that you look at that. And he's got when you enroll, you can see all the topics down the left side, so you can jump right to that. I forgot to mention this question, but somebody asked, when should I hire my first sales representative? And I was going to talk about this. And I said that the initial team, the founding team, does the sales at first, and that's important. But there is a point where you can't be doing that, because running a business, as I've done it, consumes you, and you can't just be completely involved in that. I was looking online at what some VCs and others had said, and there's varying opinions, of course, but they said once you've closed 10 or 25 deals on your own, so you as the CEO, that's when it's time to hire a salesperson, and a different person, a full-time salesperson or dedicated salesperson, because you've proven that it can be sold, and you've learned what needs to be done, and you've listened to customers and made adjustments. And once you've hit that, and you said, you've earned your stripes, you paid your dues, and you've shown some traction, that you probably have less difficulty finding a salesperson. And what you're trying to do is replicate a sales process. You're trying to figure that sales process out, and then just literally give it to them, and they follow that process. So you've beat the pioneer trail into the west, and they're just going to follow it. And this is what happened when our company ended up in the States. They hired a bunch of sales guys. They said, hell, I hired 4, and the plan was that they would fire 2 in 6 months. This is actually common practice in sales in the U.S. And I did read that somebody said hire 2 young and hungry salespeople so that they compete, and that's true. That's true. So you want to hire them in bits, and this is a suggestion that you hire them in groups of 2. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's just an interesting point about that. But things are a little bit different down in the U.S., but that's where we're competing. How do I find early adopters? This one I get asked a lot, and you just get out there and start talking to people, and they will find you, and you will find them, and you will identify them. We found people they just appeared, and you could just tell they were really keen. They're one in a million. And it's not that they're a different kind of person. It's just like I might be an early adopter for a certain product, and I might be a mainstream customer for something else. Just depends on where I am and what I'm looking for. So finding people like that, it's just getting out there and talking to people and identifying those people. And the interesting thing is they love working with you and helping you. So we don't have any other questions, and I apologize for going longer, but as I said, there's a lot to sales, and we could talk all day about it. There's the links I put up on the slide, and they're fantastic. I really do recommend. I'm not just saying that to waste people's time. I think they're really useful tools. And we're going to send out the slides, and as I said, I've got a survey that I want you to respond to, and it's just a simple survey. But what we're trying to understand here, particularly the ecosystem, is what people need for sales. Jerry Pond has identified that we need sales training, and I was just having a meeting this morning. We're talking about that sales skills there's a dearth of sales skills in New Brunswick, and when we were starting selling this 10 years ago, we didn't know what we were doing, and we learned a little bit, but watching the Americans that we ended up hiring, they just knew how to sell, and if we can bring those kind of skills and those kind of training here, we want to let people have access to that. So I think this is really important. So we want to hear from you on what your needs are and where you're at, and we're trying to figure out ways to train. Like I said, I'm not a professional salesperson. I've been involved in it and I've seen it, but there's a lot more training we can do, and there's a lot of training out there. So I hope that this gave people a little bit taste of the kind of the topics in sales. but not to fear it. I never thought I'd be a salesperson, but I actually enjoyed, you're just having conversations with people. And I found that if they didn't want to buy, if it wasn't the right fit, that's great. We just move on with our lives. But the ones that did, it really, really felt good about, solving those problems. So thanks for taking the time, and you can contact me if you have any follow-up questions. Thanks so much.